Good evening. My name is Ajamo Baraka. I am the national organizer for the Black Alliance for Peace. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being with us this evening for this very important event. The Black Alliance for Peace is an alliance that is in place in order to organize the masses of our people to fight for peace and justice. We understand in this alliance that we are, in fact, a peaceful people, but we also recognize that we are at war. And we understand that without justice, there can be no peace, and for justice, you have to fight for it. So this is a fighting formation, one that recognizes the responsibility of those of us who live at the center of empire. We are quite clear that our responsibility is to struggle. We stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, and we are preparing ourselves for the fight that we are immersed in. So tonight is part of that process of organizing our people, of attempting to try to understand what it is we up against and what we need to fight for. So we say to our people, and we say to you tonight, organize our people, understand that this fight that we're in is a protracted one, that it doesn't really matter who sits in the white people's house after November. The war against our people, the war against the colonized will continue. And our responsibility is to make sure that this war no longer remains a one-sided affair. So thank you for coming out this evening. Let's organize ourselves. Let's understand the moment that we're in, prepare ourselves for it with the understanding that together, unified and clear, we in fact will win. Thank you.
The U.S. is birthed from savagery. Europeans committed genocide against native peoples and stole their land, all while kidnapping and enslaving native and African people to turn a profit. Now, over 400 years later, the United States is a massive empire. It has 800 military bases and at least a dozen colonies scattered across the globe. Ever since its founding, the U.S. has always been at war, and it's the only country in history to use nuclear weapons against people. At this very moment, the U.S. is engaged in at least 7 wars of occupation and regime change. The mission? To ensure U.S. businesses have access to land, resources, and cheap or slave labor. But the 1% also wages war against black and colonized people in the U.S., just as they've done from the start. Police continue to murder, brutalize, and surveil black people. Our communities are impoverished, starved of resources, and thrown in jail. All the while, police departments become more and more like occupying armies. And the military budget, well, it just keeps getting bigger. The Black Alliance for Peace was launched in 2017.
The Black Alliance for Peace, as an organization, committed to revitalizing the traditional anti-war positions of the black community.
The United States is the worst abuser of human rights in the world. If you look at the invasions, the proxy wars, the sanctions.
The powers that be are seeing a threat to the status quo.
It does not matter whether the United States government agrees with Maduro and his policies, because 6 million Venezuelans wanted him to lead them. As a sovereign people, they have a right to determine their own direction and future.
Everyone has a place in this movement. We must be organized. If we want peace, we have to be willing to fight for it.
Our campaign is no compromise, no retreat. Defeat the war on African Black people in the U.S. and abroad. The campaign includes the demands to end police militarization, stop their training by the Israeli Defense Force, shut down AFRICOM, remove all U.S. military presence from Africa, defund the military, and close the 800 military bases around the world. Black people have always been the consciousness and change agents within this brutal regime. Now can be no different. We are in the heart of the empire, and we must remember our fight for liberation is connected to the liberation of Black, brown, and working class people everywhere. It is time for us to stand up to oppose U.S. war and murder and defeat the U.S., EU, NATO axis of domination. That is why the Black Alliance for Peace was founded. And that is why we need you.
Greetings from Lenape-Hoking, the part of the land of the Lenape often known as Philadelphia. We honor the truth that this land still belongs under the governance of those indigenous to it. While my comments here will focus on the Black community, I uphold the connection of our struggle to those whose land was colonized and whose land we are colonized on. Today, just 2 days after the 49th anniversary of our beloved revolutionary ancestor George Jackson's assassination by prison guards, just 16 days after the 50th anniversary of Jonathan Jackson's courageous effort to free his brother and other Soledad brothers John Clutchette and Fleta Drumgo. Today, just months after the murders of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, and the resulting rebellion that has sparked protests and inspired freedom fighters across the world, we are here to discuss the current state of the ongoing war that has been waged against Black people by this imperialist project of the U.S. and of Europe for generations. Over the centuries, there have been varied levels of clarity and confusion about how our fate as Africans are intimately connected into one global African family. But we must be very clear that the fight for our liberation demands an unwavering understanding of this connection. This connection is understood by Black revolutionaries in Colombia and the Caribbean and Cuba and Venezuela and Brazil and Europe and across the African continent. This understanding was demonstrated by the solidarity shown by our siblings in the struggle when we began to stand up together at once across the nation. We must also embody this understanding in our organizing here as we deepen and broaden our struggle and engage with our local communities. What we saw at the height of the rebellion was the important role we play here in the belly of the beast when we are determined to fight against the capitalist, patriarchal, imperialist monster that is the United States and its allies in Europe and NATO. The world is ready to follow. This is why Black liberation continues to this day to be considered one of the most significant and dangerous threats to U.S. hegemony. When we are free, everyone is free. This freedom will never allow for actions such as the perpetual oppression, destruction of, and extraction from resource-rich Black nations like Libya, Venezuela, and Haiti. So our freedom is perpetually under attack. What Gaddafi was establishing at the time that Obama bombed Libya for 226 days, in spite of the outcry from African leaders across the continent, was a free, self-determined, self-controlled Africa, an Africa that was moving toward taking charge of its own resources, ending the neo-colonial relationships with the West, and serving as a home for the needs and aspirations of Africans globally. That is why Libya was attacked. The Black community was too confused to stand up for Libya. The actions being levied against the nation were commanded by the first Black U.S. president, who gave cover to the white supremacist motives and actions of the state while creating a dangerous sense of loyalty to the U.S. within the Black community here. An illusion among Black Americans that we finally belonged. And so during the Obama administration, the black community was largely silent at destruction waged for the better part of a year against Libya, an African country. This laid the foundation for the AFRICOM program to expand across the African continent, further solidifying the military might of the U.S. in the region, the same region where Israel serves as an imperialist proxy state. Israel now is a training ground for police in our communities who use the same methods the Israeli forces use against Palestinians. The way George Floyd was murdered, the same method of pushing a knee into the neck of a detainee is used by Israeli military and police forces. And the guns and tanks that were deployed against our communities during the rebellion after George Floyd's murder, that were used to evict mothers and children from what had been a vacant home in Oakland just months before his death, thanks to the Department of Defense's 1033 program, those guns and tanks are the same ones that have been used against our family in Libya and Palestine and throughout the colonized world. The ways that the state seeks to disrupt is a massive tell for where our power lies. They try to make us believe that we are separate from our siblings that are coming across the border, or that immigration and border fight issues are not relevant to our black struggle. But we here have to know that many who cross the border are from black nations like Haiti, who have suffered ongoing disruption, corruption, and theft by U.S. agents, like in recent years, the Clintons. We have to know that Venezuela's majority population is black and indigenous, and that they are fighting to protect the revolution that was won under the leadership of a black and indigenous Chavez. We have to know and stand for them just as they stand with us, because they have yet to be confused that the borders of these nations that were imposed by the colonizing forces are more important than our historic, ancestral, and current connections. They make us believe that Africans on the continent and in the Caribbean are not aligned with us, when in truth they plan and prepare for our collaboration. They try to make us believe that women, that our trans, gay, and queer community are secondary in our communities, when there has never been and will never be a black community without us, nor has there ever been a black liberation struggle without our power and leadership. Today, we come together to examine the current state of the war that is being waged against us. We will explore the ways it manifests in each of our communities, draw deeper connections, and identify ways to further transform the analysis and organizing in our communities.
You know, there are questions of class interest that have to be addressed. And I think that if we don't do that, we'll be making a major mistake in this period, which we already made some time ago. I think that we have to clarify and put the interests of those who are suffering the most at the heart of everything that we do. And we have to talk about class so that people are aware of that issue and don't get confused and turned around. Politics gets very, very funny and fuzzy when various groups are somewhat disguising why they're moving in certain ways. And we don't need to be confused about that. We need to be clear.
Gotcha. We're gonna wrap it up, and Pierre. Go ahead, Pierre.
All right. I didn't want to thank you so much for what you said, Kwasi, and what everybody else has been saying. You see, I had to leave it at the Great Haitian Revolution, some historical, but basically the issue of class is what's at the core of it. You have class and you have neo-colonialism. President Aristide wrote a book, and I urge you to read it, called Philosophical Reflections for Mental Decolonization. And I think this is so key, it's so important. And I know Brother Kwame Nkrumah had also written a book about that, about the class nature of it. Back in the 1820s, 1840s, a Haitian peasant leader was approached by a class of rich black landowners, and they had benefited after the revolution by taking over the plantations of the white slave owners. And they came with the idea, they wanted to say, well, let's unite as black folks against the lighter skin, who were rich as well. And this peasant leader, just dirt poor, his name was Akao. He said, don't tell me that. As far as I'm concerned, a rich black, and I'll put it within the context of the US, is white and a poor white is black. So he meant it in the, he used the term mulatto, but I'm changing it around a little bit. So he dealt with the class nature of the struggle. Coming to today in Haiti, what we are seeing is a class of oppressors, such as Papa Doc Duvalier, who used the term Black Power. He used that to confuse people, so that people abroad were saying to me, well, you know, Duvalier is a great Black nationalist. It wasn't true. He was doing the work of the CIA. He was doing the work of the international white power elite. And today in Haiti, this is what's going on, where we have the masses of our people, the descendants of our people, who inherited the vision of an egalitarian society from their foremothers and forefathers who did the revolution. And to this day, they've been denied the fruits of that revolution. They are the ones being killed by militarism in the streets of Haiti today, with mercenaries from the US training the Haitian police and actually killing our brothers and sisters. And this is the big elephant in the room. And too often we see people who want to stick with the Great Haitian Revolution of 1804. That's well and good. But what's happening to the brothers and sisters who are fighting in the streets today, the descendants of those people, and the whole class nature of that struggle is pitting the masses of our people who've been denied the fruits of the promises of the Haitian Revolution, it's pitting them against that little elite, that 1%, which is allied with the white power elite that's dominating the world. So I'll stop right there on this.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for your enlightening answers. And we are gonna kind of have an open-ended question, but we'll get into the answer to these questions in our breakout room. So attendees, after a few presentations from, after some presentations from BAP Chapter Baltimore and our Q&A session, we'll probably get to the answers, but panelists, I want to keep this in mind as we move on. So Black people internationally are unified far beyond US imperialism. And we have a beautiful, unbreakable historical and ancestral bond that connects the entire African community. How do we continue to build our collective voices and develop strategies that undermine the US war machine? So that's a big goal. And it's a big goal that we want to keep in mind. And now if
you can actually, I think they can actually,
yeah,
for now, I think.
Yeah. So I'll re-ask the question because but Black people internationally are unified far beyond US imperialism. What have you witnessed in your organizing and studies that speak to the beautiful, unbreakable, historical and ancestral bond that connects the entire African community? And how do we continue to build our collective voice and develop strategies that undermine the US war machine? So all attendees can answer this, but if you could keep it 30 seconds to a minute, since we don't have a lot of Q&A questions in the chat, we have a little bit more time for y'all to answer these questions. So does anyone have?
I don't know if 30 seconds is enough.
No, you can do the hell. It's gonna, because that's a lot. But try to condense it as possible so others, everyone get a chance to answer. Now, do you want to answer first?
Anyone?
I'm sorry, go again.
We're just really asking for collective strategy ideas. We talked a lot about, what problems we're facing and, the biggest issues and targets to put pressures on, but we're just trying to see, we have a lot of powerful, great things that unite us internationally. So wondering if you have the most beneficial strategy ideas.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought the question was. I just want to make sure. So I think one of the things that is really important is that in the work that we do, we value independent political organization. We value the work that people are doing on the ground. Because I thought about this before, that there are so many types of types of work that we all get involved with. But all of it really hinges on the fact, do we really value the people who are involved in this struggle? because the nature of oppression is it dehumanizes us all, right? We undervalue ourselves, we undervalue the other people who are oppressed as in that process. And the kind of work that we do has to really have love and upliftment in it. People have to see that this work makes a difference in their lives. It doesn't always mean that you're going to win. It doesn't mean that every struggle is successful. But what happens is people begin to learn to trust themselves as their own form of liberation. I think a part of that is respecting the fact that people know what's happening in the world, so that education is a part of that process. You always get a return on investment when you invest in political education and discussing ideas with people. Again, helping people to invest in themselves in their own organizational capacity, right? Not looking towards resources that will compromise us, right, is important. People being able to say, hey, we can raise our own money, we can get our own buildings, we can get our own books, we can get our own food. All this does is empower the people, right, so that they can see that there's a world that does not, that exists outside of capitalism and imperialism, that we don't need white supremacy, right, to live. That matter of fact, you can live without imperialism and white supremacy in your life. So I think those are important concepts, and I try to boil them down to like these general concepts, because again, I've had a lot of experience with police brutality. Coming to somebody's house after their child has been murdered is a very important process, because until cameras existed in this world, right, Black people have always said that the police and the state have been doing this to us. And everybody always told us that we're exaggerating, that we're saying we're saying too much, that it can't be that bad. Now that you have a camera, we're finally able to justify all the centuries of reporting that we've had about our relationship to this colonial system, right? And now people are able to believe us. But the truth is that we shouldn't need a camera to have that kind of proof, that we should be able to believe in ourselves and be able to mobilize ourselves. So when I've come to a person's house and their child has been murdered by the police, and they want somebody, the first thing they really want is someone to believe them, to believe that their child deserved to fucking live, that they didn't deserve to die like a dog on the street. And I'm sorry I have to say it because it's important. This is what we're struggling for human beings to have the right to live, to have dignity. And that's what people want. You can build any program you want. If you don't respect the human beings, it's going to fail. You're going to build another system of oppression that is going to fail our struggle. And that's what's important that I wanted to share.
Thank you so much, because it is important. It is very important. That's kind of why I was like, Nam, do you want to get this one? Because I knew that you would bring it home. I knew that you would make those points very clear. Does anyone else want to take a stab at how we can strategize and something collective material strategies?
Yeah, this is Kwasi. I would like to say that I think it's very important for us to study the history of Pan-Africanism, the history of the incredible struggles our people have been through for the past 400 years to build a foundation and a basis for a worldwide movement of Black liberation. I mean, against incredible odds. We need to study that. I mean, I came up in the Pan-Africanist movement in the 60s, and I'm still learning stuff every day about Pan-Africanism that I did not know. For many years, I had no idea the important role that churches played in Pan-Africanism and in liberation struggle. But some of the history that I came across gave me a totally different view of their role, because I came more out of the student movement stuff and a lot of the stuff at that time where we didn't really relate to the churches that closely in the late 60s, early 70s. There are so many avenues through which people build struggle, and we need to see through our understanding of the actual history, the role that many elements in our community, many elements locally, nationally, and internationally can play in the work that needs to be done. And study, I think, will be the best cure for the question of developing more of a perspective that's concrete. Because we have a very impressive history of work, but it has taken a lot of sweat equity through the years, and a lot of disjointment and disconnection generation by generation, which constantly has to be overcome.
And I just want to echo some stuff that's happening in the chat. Ajamu is mentioning that we also have to collectively, oppose AFRICON, demand defunding of the military, stand up at Venezuela and rise up for Haiti, and prepare for war, co-ops, just really collective dependency, because that's what we need to continue to survive. And then one more answer from Pierre, and then we're gonna go to a quick break, and we'll come back for a Q&A.
One of the things I wanted to mention, and I saw Ajamu's chat, and I'll try the best I can to respond very quickly, is one of the things that's missing is connecting our people and our struggles in terms of sharing information with each other. Too often I hear sisters and brothers and other people who call themselves progressives will say, well, Haiti is so complex. I say, well, what's so complex about it? The basic slogan of the movement is Tout monde c'est monde. People are fighting for education, for the right to have an education. People are fighting for the right to have food, local production. Their land that has been stolen from them, they want that back. People are fighting for the right to vote in Haiti, the right to vote actually to put their own people in power. People are fighting to have health care for the population, clean drinking water, those basic things, health care, because pregnant women are in the hospital laying on the bare floor and dying because of lack of care. That's what the struggle is about. And so people are demanding as part of that reparations from France to start with. Reparations, because restitution first, because France stole $22 billion of our money calculated in 2003. Now it's a lot more, it's $28 billion. So they are demanding that. They are demanding the removal of this puppet regime, this neo-colonialist regime. But in order to get that, our brothers and sisters, not only in the US, but worldwide, need to break through this barrier of information that prevents us from knowing what the issues are and for connecting the issues. When I say that about Haiti, I say the same thing going on in Colombia, in various countries. When we don't know, and people in Haiti need to know more about what's going on with brothers and sisters in the US, that way we can strategize better and collectivize our responses in a way so that we can be effective and develop strategies to win this struggle, and not just complaining about the daily situations, but devise strategies so that we can win this struggle. So I'll stop right there.
Okay, we have a really urgent statement from Kirby, but right after that, we're gonna go into a break. It'll be a break we'll put in the chat. It'll be a short break, but first, Kirby, go ahead.
Thank you. Really quickly. First, Pierre, tout monde c'est monde means everyone is human, or everyone are people. Just for, he went into Creole. Sometimes when you're agitating, the language comes out and people don't understand. So I just wanted to uplift that.
Thank you.
But one of the things that I wanted to say very quickly is that political education, is very, very critical to the struggle. And the reason why I say that is because people are mentioning class in the chat, but our people, especially like Black working class people, don't even know that they're working class. And because of the idea of Red Scare, and because of the idea that the bourgeoisie, the ruling class, has set, would rather be defined as anything else but poor and working class. There is like literally a devalue of struggle that happens when people hear you identify as a poor person or a working class person. And people don't understand why would I want to be identified as poor? People make up all types of class analysis for themselves. They call themselves middle class. They say Clinton was the first Black president. Everything else to assimilate into a culture that wasn't meant for them, instead of tapping into the power of poor working class people. And that's something that we have to teach our communities, what power is. We're living in an age of struggle where structure and destruction and decentralization are being uplifted, right? But in actuality, we have to actually talk about what power is. That power isn't something that is oppressive, but something that we need to actually bring liberation here. If we don't garner power, if we don't tap into our communities, the most marginalized, we will never, ever be liberated. And that includes LGBTQ, TGNC comrades, and women, and allies who can be used in a struggle as long as we provide a plan. And the way that we can do that is to study. We have to know what a plan is, the difference between a tactic and a strategy, right? And I think that's something that people who are coming into struggle, especially right now, who are coming in because they see a George Floyd and they're jumping in, need organizers like us here to be on the ground with them, to help them study, to lead them into the work, to garner these organizations, because we have no idea how to do it. Our communities have no idea. And they're asking how. And we have to be able to have the patience to work with them to show them how we do that through study. And the final thing that I wanted to uplift before we wrap is just that just going on for Comrade Namdi is like, another thing that we have to learn is tact. What you're talking, me working with families in Brooklyn with Akai Gurley's family and Daron Smalls' family and all these families, there are organizers who want clout, right? Is what we call it, clout chasing, or not really organizers, right? But want to stand with the family. I was with this family for a day and take a picture, but don't know how to talk to families, don't know how to talk to community members, don't know how to get points of organizing demands, won't take the time to have patience to build with these families and turn them into leaders, right? And it requires tact, like literally compassion in our conversation. We can agitate and be fiery all day, but we have to come back down and talk to our class, to our people, to families that are hurting, and say that we are here and let's build. And I just wanted to really uplift that, because that anger that he was feeling wasn't at us. It was at a system that breaks you all the way down and you have no idea how to fight, none. And then people come in as organizers and don't know how to really build with families and community members. And that's a whole nother skill within itself.
Yeah, I mean, like, perfect ending. Thank you so much, Kirby, for that comment. And I just want to echo that, yeah, we all have to find our different places in the movement, whether we're like, you know, chefs or artists, or we are amazing at calming people down and talking to people, or we're good at, you know, making deals and leveraging. We all have an important space. So right now we're going to take a 5-minute break. So if you need to rest or, you know, do something else, try and be back here by 2:42, and we're going to go back to the Q&A. So thank you so much, everyone, for your energy. We'll be back.
Can I jump in really quickly? Can I just recommend that we keep the break at 10 minutes, just because it's been a long time for people. And then also, can I ask that people, because we had problems with the registration document, the registration facilitation process with Eventbrite, we were not able to collect all of the information that we needed in order to be able to put everyone into the correct breakout room. So if you would help us out by next to your name, making sure your name is still on the document, but next to your name, putting your city, so that we can make sure we move you into the right breakout room. The primary rooms that we have are Philly, New York, Baltimore, Oakland, LA, and DC. Although we, depending on the number of people, we may combine a couple of them. If you're in one of those areas or close to one of those areas and can organize in one of those areas, just put those cities down next to your name. If not, then put the city you're in, and we'll see if there is a number of people from that place that we could put together in another room. Again, if you don't know how to rename yourself, you can click on participant at the bottom. And when you click on that, if you click your name, then you'll have the option to rename. Or if you click on the window of your own window, there are 3 dots next to your little box at the top in the right corner, and you click that and it should give you the option to rename. So please do that, and we will be back in 10 minutes.
All the wahala, all the problems, all the things we would think say you could do for this world it start when the teacher, schoolboy and schoolgirl jam together. Who be teacher? I go let you know. Who be teacher? I go let you know. Who be teacher? I go let you know. When we be picking, when we day for school, teacher be teacher. On the university, lecturer be teacher. When we start to work, government be teacher. Who be government teacher? Culture and tradition. Who be government teacher? Culture and tradition. Culture and tradition. Culture and tradition. Now the problem side of teacher and student I go sing about. I don't pass speaking, I don't pass school, university, self I pass. As I don't start to work, the government I must don't face though. You go for France, England, Italy, Germany, and them culture. For the be teacher, for them you go China, Russia, Korea, Vietnam, and them culture. For the be teacher, for them you go Syria, Jordan, Iran, Iraq, and them culture. For the be teacher, for them. Let us face ourselves for Africa. Not the matter of Africa. Bring this party of my song. Now all the problem of this world, him we they carry for Africa. You know go ask me. 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 Problems of inflation, problems of corruption, of mismanagement, still by government. Now here we they carry all over Africa. Now the latest one, now him they make me laugh. Austerity, austerity. Now him the latest one, now him they make me laugh. Why are they laugh? Man no fit cry. Ubiya watishana oyibo. Ubiya watishana oyibo. All of us in the first election and the second election all in Nigeria. Now the second election now in was he pass. Babala nonsense. Babala nonsense. It pass regime. It pass corruption. Which kind election be this? People not go vote. Them come get big numbers. Thousands to thousands. Millions to billions. Which kind election be this? Babala nonsense.
Yes, this is the ghetto. Showing up now.
All
sing it now.
Revolution will not be televised. The revolution, Huey Newton. I'm cooking up a solution. I'm ready to get the shooting. I'm ready to spark this movement. Dot speed. It get the bump in my head. It get the thumping. Got me thinking about something. Freedom that's on my mind and got me reaching out. Something's when my teeth stop showing and that heat start flowing. I'ma rock this mic tonight. I grab the mic just like I'm Dolomite. Overseeing your oversight. Coke the baking soda cause they wanna give us 3 strikes. And they wanna take a nigga's life. Well, send them babies off to college with them crack dollars. Black Impalas, trapping up black fathers. Trapping to feed their daughters, but they lack knowledge. They not aware, Section 8 never wanted them there. And they babies mama welfare. It's like a twisted game of truth or dare. I never promised to repeat them on the proof is there. True repair come from reparation. Black producer trying to save the nation. Sing. Don't look at me like that. I mean, I declare war upon these fake ass outlaws. My Jamaican said it's seen it before. Yeah, I could burn Babylon. Yo, burn Babylon and then settle the score. I am Tiara, no Tiara, it's a metaphor. In remembrance of a black girl, I kill his beat just like a savage or like a maverick out in Dallas, spitting rhymes galore. Encore, you should bet for more. I said America stage. Y'all shook to see me good today. Strange looks, I'm reading books and ancient niggas slaves. Bound for glory, better let freedom ring. I sing the songs that my granny sang. Demolish those that stand in my way. I detonate like I'm napalm. No chest, face gone. John Travolta, the way I face off. Usain Bolt, the way I take off. You should be afraid of what I don't say, but what I can do. Unite Chris and Pyrus, documented in your Bible. mass incarceration just to re-enslave us. Reincarnated, I'm a new nigga. Same gun, it's a new trigger. So my enemies are slew quicker. If you knew, then you do different. Black Medusa on a new mission. Sing. Don't look at me like that. Racism preceded slavery or slavery preceded racism. I ask myself, is this you or is this me? Is the hatred that's been deep-seated for eons? Or is it something that you just came up with? Is it something that you noticed when you decided that you were superior? When you decided that I was inferior? When you decided that my royalty wasn't good enough for you? Is it something that you just came up with when you saw how good my black shines in the sun? Or is it something that you came up with when you saw how my back wasn't broken?
Hey, everyone. So we are back. I just wanted to say that that last song, somebody was asking who that is. So that last song was Black Rap. You can find them. I put the, I tried to put it into the chat. I will recopy. I'm going to drop the link in chat so that you can check that out. Local artists out of the PA. I wanted to also, before we go into the question and answer section, to thank everyone who changed their name, but I wanted to ask everyone if you can please do that again. Channing dropped instructions for how to do that. We have made great progress with the breakout rooms. We would like to do that seamlessly, and anybody who we don't have that information for will be left in the main room, and then we will move you into the breakout rooms afterwards. But if we can get as many people into the breakout rooms right away as possible, that will be better. So again, just rename yourself, keep your actual name, and then just add your city. And then we will be able to add everybody to the cities. The cities that we have right now are Philadelphia, New York, Oakland, Los Angeles, and Baltimore and DC, and we will add another city if necessary, or conflate two cities if necessary once we see what the numbers look like, okay? So turning it back over to Kendall and Ricky for the question and answer section of this moment.
All right, so we have a few really, really great questions. So Ajamu asked, what concrete situations do we raise up as Africans to ensure that our internationalism is not abstract? So we want to give it 2 minutes to whoever wants to, excuse me, any of the panelists who want to jump in and answer that.
Yeah, this is Quasi. I mean, you know, that's a no-brainer. I mean, Africa is the most severely affected area of the world on so many different levels, and likewise the conditions in places like Haiti, et cetera, et cetera. You know, as was said earlier, all we basically need is better communication channels so that we're being as concrete as we can about the specific kinds of things that are going on and what should be focused on. But, you know, our whole, the whole Pan-African world is a crisis center, and it's the most severely hit crisis center in the world.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to jump in with any solutions?
Hi, this is Pierre again. And one thing I wanted to suggest, we just had the Haiti Action Committee, and in collaboration with the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund, which are two organizations that help support local organizing at the grassroots level in Haiti. We just had a webinar with former First Lady Mildred Aristide of Haiti. And it's on our website, the website of the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund, haitiemergencyrelief.org, where there is a number of speakers who speak, give some concrete who talk concretely about some of the things that are at issue right now in Haiti. One of the things that, of course, money is always needed by all of us who are organizers. And but one of the things that we are focusing on at this time is the building of a hospital in Haiti for the UNIFA, the University of Dr. Aristide Foundation. And it's very important. It's not just the financial aspect, but it's also the connection with institutions that might be interested, because the university is training attorneys, people who would be of service to the community, healthcare professionals, dentists, various fields. And also it's a space for young people to think about what's going on, to look at the history of the country and of the world, and how do we bring solutions to our problems. So these are in terms of some concrete aspects. That's one of them. And I could go on and on with a whole list, but I'll reserve that. Again, our website is Haiti Action Committee. There was a mistake in next to my name. It says HaitiAction.net. That's a whole different organization with which we don't agree. But ours is HaitiSolidarity.net and also HaitiEmergencyRelief.org for the webinar. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And I do want to acknowledge something that Netfa says in the chat, that one concrete issue is the affinities between the Black oppressor collaboration class within the US with those in places like Haiti and all over the continent, and also the militarization of our communities and the role of the police. Oh, and the role of the missionary orgs in our communities and in the US where African people are. So the nonprofits and the civil societies. So that was a good point, but thank you. Kendall, do you want to ask the next question from the chat?
And I just want to thank Pierre for correcting. And yeah, Haiti Action Committee. I'll try and find the website and I'll put it in the chat if you want to learn more about the resources that he was speaking about. The next question is from LG. I don't know if that's this person's actual name or their phone, but how do the panelists understand the significance of land, namely in agriculture and food production and African resistance on the continent and the diaspora? So yeah, land loss has been a really big part of our history and has to be a really big part, like land gain and reclaim has to be part of the revolution. So what are y'all's thoughts about those stories?
Can I say something to that then?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think early on Malcolm was helping us to understand that land, as he said, land was the basis of revolution. That the fact that colonialism exists is to dispossess people from the land and the resources of the land. The fact that in North America and throughout the whole Americas, that the indigenous people were culturally willing to share the wealth of this land, and it still led to the theft of the land is important. If you want to make history right side up, those people who have been dispossessed have to be able to get access to the land and to the resources. Again, I think that question is also loaded, right? Because we're not trying to build a struggle where we create another a class of Black landlords or brown landlords. That all of us have to be able to benefit from the resources of the land, that they belong to the people, and the ability to grow food, the water, the animals there. You know what I mean? We have to be able to build. Having land is key to self-determination and independence, but it's also, we have to be wary that it also is it allows the misleadership class itself to say that it's a part of a revolutionary process, but they want to stunt it, right, and steal the land for their own purposes. So it's very key, and everybody understands it. Again, this is why we see imperialism. This is why we see colonialism, because the land theft was the spark to help grow imperialism and to bring into life capitalism at its highest level.
Can I add on to that? Is that okay? Just like taking, the banner of the Soviet Revolution, peace, land, and bread, right? And it's critical to understand like the severity of what that means, as comrades are saying, because it's your connection, to the earth is where you live, where you sleep, how you eat. Everything is based on land. I'm in New York City. I'm on the Lape land that was stolen by indigenous people. Manhattan was sold and stolen for $27, right? Central Park used to be a Black community that was paved over. And I think it's very critical to understand and breaking it down to like a very minute level about food and how food is grown. In the United States, farmers are demanded to destroy half their crop because of overproduction. In New York City, there are more empty homes than homeless people. So when we're talking about land and bringing it to a concrete place, right, into what's going on in society, we see that there is. Can folks hear me? I think my internet broke up for a second.
No, you're
Yes.
good.
Okay. Bring it to a concrete place of what's actually happening. That the idea of land grab is still a real thing. That gentrification is a recent, right, idea of what colonialization looks like. Right now, the demand for cancel the rents is national because we're in a pandemic. The idea of being able to stay in your home. On a plot of land that was stolen from ancestors years ago. So it's all interpersonal, and it's all intersectional. And it's something that we see that's happening in Africa. It's something that's happening in Haiti. Pierre can speak about this, that fracking is something that has been started in Haiti, or that the Clintons went to Haiti to gentrify the land of Haiti, right? So people are losing their homes. Or the fact that after the earthquake, you have millions of people in tents and Port-au-Prince while people continue to steal resources. And it's coming back full circle now, where people are doing rent strikes, where LA is one of the, and folks from Cali can definitely uplift this, that LA has like one of the largest homelessness populations in the country. And is currently, Skid Row is currently in a place of being gentrified now.
Thank you for adding on to that, Kirby, because you know what, that kind of, I think that segues into the next question, because you mentioned all of these movements happening that we're seeing with, you know, the rent strikes and you know, that's coming not only from COVID, but, you know, that's coming from other movements like defunding police and just all these uprisings that we're seeing. And Ariel from NYC, and hopefully I said that right, she asks, how do we intercept the co-opting of uprisings? You know, how do we educate and organize our people daily? And what can we do when we see politicians and blue check activists, individual activism swoop in and use the anger and the suffering of poor working class communities for their own agenda? So we've seen this in Ferguson, and we see this in the most recent uprisings. So does anyone want to speak to those things specifically?
I can speak to that. I think that part of it is political education, because a lot of times what happens is that people get disempowered, right? People don't necessarily believe they have the tools and what it takes to successfully wage a campaign to make change happen. And so people who want to do the right thing, people who want to co-opt the movement alike understand that. And then it becomes a, well, who gets there first? Is it the people who are actually going to uplift and help the community find or like understand they have the capacity to do that? Or is it going to be the people who are going to come in and get the pictures and use it to further their own personal career? And so once you educate people politically on like, hey, like baseline, these are the things that need to happen in order for change to happen, like, you know, searching for like capitalist gain is not going to solve these problems. These problems need to be solved from the bottom up. Like they cannot be solved by just working with the system. You have to go against it. And once you can understand that, first of all, you can understand what the motivations behind why people come in and try to help you, because it's like if their motivations don't line up with actually like, you know, what needs to happen, then you're going to reject them. And also, at the end of the day, political education can empower people to be like, we don't even need anybody to come in. We got this from right here. And like, it would be great if you could like stand in solidarity in other cities and locations with us. But we don't even need anybody to come in to garner the attention for the political movement that we're trying to do. I think it behooves us as people who are already organizers to be in community with each other, because first of all, that's a community of people that you can be accountable to. And also it's community people who can help you be like, hey, like we're seeing certain things going on. So-and-so is in this city. Sean King, D-Ray is in this city doing X, Y, Z. And these are the reasons why this is not going to work out beneficially for that community. And then it can be something where you can go back to the community who has these people coming in to try to pilfer and take that clout, and say, hey, like, you know, we see what's happening. We're a little concerned because of X, Y, and Z. Here's a different way we can go about this. We can definitely come alongside you and help you with that. But I think it definitely starts, it really starts with political education, because once people know how things should go in order to break down capitalism, then they won't be taken advantage of by folks who use the illusion of fighting against the system to secure their place within it.
And unfortunately, we ran out of times for the Q&A, but we do want to acknowledge some of the questions that we're reading. And for the panelists as well, the chat is a great feature. And so we had some questions about a reading list for children. And I think that came when Ricky introduced herself and said that she had a children's reading project. So Ricky, if you want to message the person who asked that question, maybe with some recommendations or email, that might be a good move. And then also we had some questions about, you know, what does it mean to form an alliance and how do we utilize, you know, allies to our best advantage? And also we had questions about like the specific aspects of the reparations movement, what our current political climate means for our movement for reparations, and how like the internal politics of the reparations movement like help or don't help our actual goal of getting reparations. And I think that is a really great question for Namdi. So if you want to respond in the chat, that could be a great thing to do. And our question about the Alliance, we'll also have breakout rooms. So you have specific questions, you would be able to ask the panelists that's in each city, or just message them because we're in a conference together. But right now we're gonna go over, we've been talking about a lot about Black August. So Yane, do you want to take it away?
Sure. So we're sorry that we can't go through all of the questions. This is such a robust conversation. There's so much we could have gone. We didn't want to go too long, but we are over time. And so we just want to make sure we get everything in and all the presenters have the time to make their presentation. But, you know, as we know, this is Black August. It was mentioned in the welcome intro video. It's been talked about throughout the day. And we just wanted to play a video that was produced by a comrade in Black Lives Matter Philly and with the Abolitionist Law Center that was being put out by them in collaboration with the Black Alliance for Peace, talking about Black August. And so I'm gonna ask Jacqueline to go ahead and cue that up and play that video for everyone now.
The spirit of Black August is a long smoldering spark of the fire in the hearts of a people.
On August 7, 1970, just a short time after George Jackson was transferred to San Quentin Prison, George's brother, Jonathan, a 17-year-old high school student in Pasadena, led a raid on the Marin County Courthouse with a satchel full of handguns, an assault rifle, and a shotgun hidden under his coat. Educated as a political revolutionary by his brother, Jonathan invaded the court. He demanded that the Soledad brothers be released.
We are aware of the fact that the opposition uses the kill off the head principle. Well, I could die tomorrow, but there'll be 200 or 300 people to take my place. That's what we're working for, revolution.
A year and 2 weeks after the revolutionary takeover in Marin, prison guards at San Quentin ruthlessly murdered George Jackson.
It's not new. It just happened to be my son this time instead of some other black woman's son. They set up his murder just like they do everybody else that speaks out against them. I blame them all because they have the power to change these things and don't want to. Can't you understand? They don't want to change them. Imagine when the American public is going to wake up to the fact that the people who own and run this country don't want to do right.
Reaffirmation, rededication to the movement for Black liberation, a special emphasis on political prisoners. It's a moment in which people do fast from sunup to sundown. It's a time in which there is intense study, particularly in the fields of Black history and revolutionary writings.
Beginning to learn, beginning to relate to each other, learn how to function together. We're just beginning.
If I leave here alive, I'll leave nothing behind. They'll never count me among the broken men.
So shout out to Aunt Sheree who produced that video, and shout out to all of our revolutionary ancestors who have been fighting fearlessly, who fought fearlessly to the death for our liberation, and to those who are still behind bars, who who we have to continue to and fight for, and let us never forget to center those of our community who have been captured by the state and fighting for them in their return. Now we want to have a presentation from BAP Baltimore. So the reason that we are presenting BAP Baltimore is because Baltimore as a city has been really thorough in educating and centering these issues through multiple organizations in this in that city, to be able to see kind of like how work as it relates to like collectively organizing and centering the work that you do in your city, including this internationalist perspective in that work. And so we wanted to, I wanted to bring up Vanessa. Vanessa is a member of BAP Baltimore. She is a BAP in general. She's on the coordinating committee of BAP. She is the coordinator of the research team, which is very important for all of our work, and also has been instrumental in the development of a Baltimore BAP. And so I wanted to ask Vanessa if you could talk to people and just talk about how BAP Baltimore came to be and what it was about BAP that really drew you into, that drew you to it.
Sure, thanks, Yane, and thank you everyone for your presentations and your questions and your presence and your energy. So the timing of my meeting up with BAP was perfect. I just moved to Baltimore a couple days before BAP was participating and a co-host of an event for the No Foreign Bases campaign. Okay, my volume is up all the way. Can you hear me all right? So I had been receiving the BAP e-newsletters, and I was pretty blown away because where I was politically, I had been very domestic focused. And I always considered myself, broadly anti-imperialist, and honestly felt a little overwhelmed at, understand certain specifics of, how U.S. imperialism was affecting, other colonized people around the world. So when I was getting these e-newsletters from BAP, I mean, it was connecting the dots, And so I went to this conference, and I knew that I wanted to join. This was 2018, I believe. So shortly after that, Ajimu linked me up with another BAP Baltimore member, and he suggested that we, put together a list of our contacts and that we organize a dinner where he would come to town and talk about BAP, and our contacts at the dinner can talk about what are the needs in Baltimore, what is the work already going on in Baltimore. So we did this a couple of times. Then shortly after that, with these contacts and their friends, and I met Ujima UPP at this time. We decided to hold a forum on the campaign that we were developing for ending the war on Black and African people. And we wanted to bring together groups and people who were doing, work on domestic issues of repression and police violence, with organizers from BAP and BAP membership groups who could tie everything together between the domestic and the international. And that involved working with our contacts and other groups here. And being that I was new to Baltimore, it really helped that we already had, some member organizations like nearby in DC, and PACA, as well as Friends of the Congo, were going to be some of our speakers, and they also helped, the organizing. So it wasn't all on, my shoulders, and the other couple of BAP members that in Baltimore that were helping to organize. And Ujima People's Progress Party was a co-organizer in the event and brought, all of their contacts out and members. And that's when we first met Erica, and we had a lot more contacts after that event. So we held a follow-up meeting, and that led to the development of having kind of our first sort of official BAP Baltimore meeting. And we also, did tabling at different events in the city and met more people that way. We started holding some more of our own events, which I think Erica will talk about a little bit. And eventually the meetings became regular monthly meetings. And then, in the past year, we started doing, 1 hour organizing and 1 hour PE that we based on the BAP Outreach Toolkit. And so we're going through the principles of unity and sort of using that as our study guide for the PE. And yeah, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of how we started here.
Awesome, thanks so much. And Ricky, you got involved. How did you get involved? What was your first connection with BAP Baltimore and with BAP in general?
So what Vanessa said, that first sort of big conference that they held, I went there to support Kelly Davis, which is the wife of Keith Davis Jr., who is currently incarcerated. I went there to support because they were also being featured, as well as this Tawanda Jones, who does West Wednesdays and all of that. So I went there in support of that, and that is when I seen the entire. It was a big production that took place. Ajamu had sort of videoed in and discussed BAP, and then right then and there, I had signed up to be a BAP member, and I went to the first meeting, and then the rest is sort of history. I also remember Ujima as well.
Yeah, so why don't you give that history? And you actually have some images that we can play while you talk a little bit about what BAP's been doing right now.
So, as Vanessa's mentioned, Baltimore has been pretty busy, and we've done fairly. It may not seem like a lot, but as I was putting together this montage, we have done we've done a lot. One of our first major actions was against Candace Owens. She had came to Baltimore. Um, uh, right after Trump had made his statements about Baltimore being, a dirty city and all of that, and he had came, and then the following week, Candace Owens came, and we sort of disrupted that narrative because Maryland has a big Republican base, and a Black Republican base, I should say, and they are fairly good at calling out what is happening with the misleadership of the Democrats who have ran Baltimore for decades. You know, what they are saying is true, but what we went out there to argue, don't it's still, even if they are saying, even if what they are saying is true, that's not the direction we need to go. We need to build, Black independent power. We need to, invoke internationalism. We need to understand imperialism. Our campaigns have included fighting against the Operation Reckless Pursuit, which is one of Trump's proposals for the militarization of police, and that would be on top of the 1033 program that already exists in Baltimore, and as well as the deadly exchange program. So these are things that we have had teach-ins about. We've had an in-person teach-in pre-pandemic, and then we have had a virtual one that Ajamu was a part of um, as well. And we have also had Housing Coalition meetings in support of Douglas Holmes' fight to, remain. Um, and I think they're one of the last, if not the last, remaining public housings in the city. Correct me if I'm wrong, Namdi. And and their fight against Hopkins. And then here, pictured right now, Vanessa and myself were participants in an Operation Relentless Pursuit national conversation that featured Alex Vitale. We have been present outside of the embassy in support of Venezuela. We have last summer we were part of the Black August event on Marcus Garvey Day with the Jericho movement. Currently, we are a part of we're in support of Ujima's Gloria Richardson garden that they're starting. And this is another image from the Candace Owens disruption, and PACA members were there as well in support, and the Pringles. And Vanessa got to go to Venezuela for her support of Maduro. And this was the in-person teaching. So we have done a significant amount. We have participated in 2 African Liberation Days last year and this year. We have been on the Real News networks, several of our members. That's Brandon. You can see there's the kids. That's that you will always see in some action. So we have been involved in a lot, and because we are doing so much, it was important for us to also invoke political education, and it's very it's a learning process that we're doing. This isn't nothing that we have like concrete. But it has helped at least have a clear line of what we want BAT Baltimore to look like and present itself as, and the actions that we have behind BAT Baltimore and the different organizations and different actions that we have supported under the umbrella of BAT Baltimore, and the different things that each members are involved in. I know the All African People Revolutionary Party has connections with us, and the Maryland Council of Elders, as well as Ujima. Like I said, we have worked with Reverend Annie Chambers and Douglas Holmes. So we have expanded, and because we're expanding, we want to make sure that the line is clear. And so we do emphasize political education. And I think that's what makes us a benefit to a lot of organizations, but also keeps other organizations away, because we're very clear on what our line is. So
Right.
so that is BAT Baltimore. Yes.
And, I just wanted to ask Nandi if you could just really quickly give a little sense of what, how organizing within BAP has affected your organizing in general. Could you speak to that really quickly?
Yeah, I think overall for us, it was, first of all, the match in our anti-imperialist stance was the key reason why we were attracted. And for those who don't know, we're trying to create a political party, an electoral party here, led by Black workers. And we want to be able to have organizers who, when they do run for office, have a voice around the international questions that face African people and other oppressed people. This has allowed us to link up with anti-imperialist forces, not just in our local area, but PACA is a good example in DC, and the kind of communication that we have with the base that is a part of BAP is important. It's allowed us also to literally have more connections in the local work that we're doing. I think for those who don't understand the international questions, when they come around Ujima, they're able to be exposed to these questions, they're being exposed to the organizers, and slowly but surely people get to have some discussion about international issues, even when we're dealing with local work. So I think there's a real good relationship and symbiosis that we use to move forward.
Thanks so much. One of the things that's really important to us is in this moment is to make sure that that internationalist perspective is actually really integrated in the organizing work that people are doing. That is why BAP was created, in order to help to move that along, to move that important goal forward, and increasing that, or returning and broadening that internationalist perspective. And we want people to understand what's possible. And one of the things that has really been wonderful about BAP is exactly what you mentioned, Nandi, is the ability to get connected with organizers across the country and around the world who are organizing internationalists. So whatever it is that we're working on in our local communities begins to have this international perspective as it comes in, but also is able to be communicated out to organizers literally around the world. And that's one of the things that BAP has done really well, is building these connections with really highly analytical, highly connected to these issues individuals who can expand the work and expound on the work. We also have a campaign to close the military bases that's connected to the issue of the defunding the military. We are part of the coalition to close all 800 plus military bases around the world, and the BAP-driven campaign that is a part of that campaign is the campaign to shut down AFRICOM, the AFRICOM program. And you can learn about all of our campaigns again if you go to the Black Alliance for Peace website. Just wanted to recognize the outreach team. The outreach team organized this event, worked really hard, and so just wanted to say thank you to the members of the outreach team. That's Kendall on the left, and then a little lower on the left next to Kendall is Ricky, and that's me above Ricky, and then in the middle is Jacqueline, and then Bilal there, and Bashina, and Jelani must not have sent in a picture, but definitely want to recognize Jelani and all of the work that has done, including that What Is BAP, amazing, awesome What Is BAP video that we that was in the beginning, that we watched in the very opening. Am I missing? Is there anyone else that's missing that was here today that's missing from the outreach team? Okay, great, because we don't want to miss anyone. So please, once again, visit BAP social media. If anybody wants to join, you can always go to the blackallianceforpeace.com, and there you'll see where you can become a member as an individual or as an organization. Members are all people of African descent, but if you are not of African descent, you can still support BAP as a supporter, as an individual, and as an organization. You can follow us on our Facebook and our Twitter, and we also do have an Instagram, so you can look for us on Instagram as well.